Hi guys, Ian Johnson from DriveSuccess.com. Today we're going to talk about PEST analysis, and this is basically a strategic planning tool that is most often associated with large corporations and large enterprises. However, I'm going to show you today why it's equally important for small and medium-sized companies. Okay? Basically, PEST is an acronym that stands for Political, Economic, Socio-Cultural, and Technological Changes. Now, these are basically variables outside of your operations, ones you really have no control over, but they're changes that basically impact your business. And the tool itself is fairly simple to understand. It's fairly easy to understand how this works. It's a lot like a SWOT analysis, and I did a video about a SWOT analysis a while back in terms of using SWOT and a TOES analysis, and it's kind of the same concept. You're basically accounting for these different variables within this grid here. And while the tool is fairly simple and easy to understand, it's the plans that come out of these quadrants or these squares that are more involved. And basically, in this case, you have to think of it as a contingency planning tool. Okay? So that's the most important thing I want you to take away today, is this is a contingency planning tool. All right? And it's it's fairly easy to understand. I'm going to go through each one of these, but it's the strategies that come out of them that can be more involved. So we're going to take a look at political. When you think about political, there are political parties that have an affinity for, raising taxes or lowering taxes. Some are seen as pro-labor. Some are seen in favor of regulation. Some are seen in favor of deregulation. And so these are the type of issues that you want to pay attention to. Obviously, an increase or a decrease in tax rates is going to impact your business. And that's why right around, election cycles, you get this period where large corporations are reluctant to move forward on expenditures or hiring or these type of things until they know exactly what's going to come out of the election. So that's the kind of thing that you look for when it comes to political variables. However, just to give you an idea of how this might apply to a small and medium-sized business, let's say you own a restaurant or you own a very nice coffee shop and you have this perfect location. They always say location, location, location. So you get this perfect location, customers love coming to your place, it's very easy to get to, but all of a sudden your local town or borough or city enacts a construction plan that basically diverts traffic for a period of 6 months, maybe even to a year, or they tear up the road, they do something. And that is a political variable that directly impacts a small and medium-sized business. Now, you want to be proactive in those cases, you don't want to be reactive. And if you're just reacting to that situation, it's very hard to sustain that type of impact on your operation. So that's the kind of thing you want to pay attention to. And in that case, you may, be able to do certain things with your customers in order to let them know that this is going to happen. You may want to do things in terms of, letting them know months in advance that this is going to happen, or it could happen. You might start doing deliveries. There's all kinds of solutions that you can do in order to make sure that that's not an impact on your operation. So when it comes to political, yes, there's a macro portion of this analysis and there's also a micro portion, okay? When you look at economical impacts, you're talking about, your business cycles, the economic activity in terms of the economy as a whole, but you're also looking at more micro issues relating to interest rates. Right now, we've got very competitive interest rates. Companies are benefiting from an extremely low cost of capital. However, companies are still spending a lot of money on financing. In fact, their financing is going up. So why is this happening? Low interest rates, high financing, what's going on? And what's happening in this case is that we've got an economy where people aren't buying anywhere near as much. And when they do buy, they take too long to pay. So now you're financing inventory for longer because people aren't buying as much. And when they do buy, they take too long to pay, you're financing receivables longer. So these are the type of things you want to pay attention to in this portion of the analysis. Sociocultural. I've written things pertaining to lifestyle changes, preferences, and I've put in parentheses here customer segments. Now, to give you an idea of the sociocultural impacts on a large corporation, think of McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's is constantly changing its messaging and its focus to a changing dynamic. Okay, to a changing demographic, to a changing customer segment. When I was a kid, it was Hamburglar and Ronald McDonald and everyone chasing each other, trying to steal their hamburgers and fries. And now they've basically changed their approach, but they've always been changing it. They are very in tune with their customer segments. They know what the impacts are on lifestyle changes, preferences, demographics in terms of people getting older. So they're always trying to appeal to a new audience. So when it comes to sociocultural, it's really about understanding your customer segments. And that doesn't matter whether you're in a business-to-consumer market and you're tracking age, ethnicity, gender, or you're in a business-to-business market and you're deciding between working with OEMs, integrators, and value-added resellers. You really have to understand the changes in terms of what's happening with your customer segments. So sociocultural, yes, it's lifestyle changes, people get older, their preferences change, but it's also something more related to your customer segments. Finally, technological. Now, technological, what I've written here is research and development and competing technologies, and that's probably the biggest issue that impacts a company. Okay, and these competing technologies often happen outside of your immediate market. And to give you an idea of this, I worked for 10 years for a company that sold raw materials and consumables and machine parts for companies and manufacturers in the optical media industry. It was a great company, it was very good to me, and I enjoyed working there. Our company was very smart. We knew that downloads and that downloads were going to impact our business, and that basically the age of today's consumer was more in line towards the downloads and the iPods and these type of things. So that's the type of impact that a technological change outside of your market can have on your market. So we were very proactive. We started to pursue other industries. But that's the type of thing you need to pay attention to, okay? Nowadays, nobody buys a CD or a DVD anymore. Very few people are buying Blu-ray discs, okay? And I've included data transfer in this case. And what I mean by this is, when you're looking at technological impacts and changes to your business, you're looking at things that are going to increase the speed of your business, things that are going to allow you to get back to customers faster, things that are going to allow you to manage your inventory in real time. So these are the type of issues you want to look for when you're doing a PEST analysis. And again, the tool itself is a fairly simple and easy tool to understand. It's not terribly difficult in terms of its application. However, it's the individual strategies that come out of these 4 quadrants that can be quite involved. And in this case, you want to think of it as a contingency planning tool. Okay? Be proactive. Don't just react to these instances. Come up with individual plans that allow you to handle, that aforementioned example of, construction or, something that happens in your local town or borough that is political in nature that's going to impact your business. Anticipate these type of things, okay? Look at interest rates, be aware that, there are impacts in the economy that can have an impact on your operations, even if they're not directly related to your company, okay? They could be the economy as a whole, all right? Sociocultural, understand that customer segments play a huge role, and they basically lead into lifestyle changes and certain preferences that change over time. Finally, technological, technologies in terms of competing technologies and issues in terms of technology directly impact your research and development, directly impact your operations. As I mentioned it before, the optical media industry was hit hard by downloads. But also pay attention to the data transfer, okay? So again, it's a contingency planning tool. It's a very simple and easy tool to understand, but it's more about the strategies that come out of this tool that allow you to be proactive instead of reactive. So that's it, strategic planning, PEST analysis. Ian Johnson, DriveSuccess.com. Bye-bye.